So we joke around about The Rock always wearing this tight khaki shirt in a lot of his movies, almost like he's playing the same character. But boy, it wasn't until this movie I realized Vin Diesel and white tank tops. Didn't even take 5 minutes into the movie for him to get in one. Ray Garrison, a Marine, is brought back to life through the use of technology and nanobots, enhancing his overall strength, stamina, intelligence, but at a hefty price from the company that invented it. That's all pretty much it without giving any spoilers to you guys. This is a spoiler-free review. If you want to check out my spoiler review once the movie is released, you can check it out on the podcast channel Film Strippers. With a movie like Bloodshot, I was semi-curious for it just for the plot and the attachment to the comic book property. It's one of those comic book properties that fans for years have been dying to see on the big screen just because the potential behind it is so big and could start off a new franchise. And after seeing this movie, ain't nothing gonna happen with this franchise. This is for sure one of those movies where the trailers really did just spoil the entire movie for you, to the point where if you've seen the trailers, which I'm sure you have because they're a little bit annoying if you ask me, remembering the trailers will actually bore you for the first half of this movie just because you know exactly where it's headed. And I wasn't even expecting greatness from this movie. I knew it would probably fall flat on the plot line, but the trailer was showing some of those awesome sequences with Vin Diesel getting his face blown off. And I'm like, alright, if it's not gonna tingle my brain, hopefully it can tingle other parts of my body and get me excited to watch this movie. And while there are hints of cool action scenes, a lot like the ones you see in the trailer where Vin Diesel does get his face blown off and the nanotechnology repairs his body, it is still very boggled down with quick cut, sloppy, shaky cam fight scenes. The fight scenes in this movie were choreographed so badly, or I should say just filmed so badly, where they're really up close and every time a punch happens, the camera has to cut 10 different angles, making the action just not fun to watch on screen, not very engaging. You get lost on what is happening on screen. Don't get me wrong, there are some rather cool sequences, but for 80% of the time, it is shot in this quick, fast-paced motion that really is just not appealing to the eye. When it comes to Vin Diesel, you either like him or hate him. I don't mind the guy as an actor. I just really feel now with this movie that he's falling into the rut where he's just the same stereotypical tough guy. There really is no differentiation for me from this character to what he is as Dominic Toretto to what he is in the XXX movies. It's a guy out for revenge. It's a guy who puts on an angry face and fights like a tough guy. There's really nothing that stands out about his character. You just really see him going through the motions of a meaty guy who's out to punch somebody. You also have the bad guy who's played by Pearce that comes off very one-dimensional. He's just the stereotypical evil man who's the head of a corporation, is in charge of everybody. The motivations and plot in this movie are just not fully evolved, to where there are points in this movie you're thinking to yourself, why are they doing this again? Why is this happening? Why go through all this elaborate technology to make a superhero and then just use him for these purposes? And on the superpower that Vin Diesel gets, it's not even fully explored to where you can really enjoy it. And that's just so insulting to the movie and the character, because it's such a fascinating thing that you can be rebuilt by nanobots and you can have all these other abilities like constantly be connected to the internet, self-regeneration. A lot of the times the superpowers in this movie are just brushed over and you don't even understand how Vin Diesel is just so quick to understand how his new powers work. If I'm being completely honest, the only saving grace for this movie was Lamar Morris. If you can put aside his British accent, which, hey, hats off to you. We see British actors use American accents all the time. It was kind of cool to see an American actor use a British accent. But the dude plays a very genius tech head who teams up with Vin Diesel, and his just banter and comedy throughout the movie really lighten it up to where you're like, okay, you're making this movie watchable, you're making it enjoyable for me, and honestly, without his character involved in this film, you might not have been all that invested, because it wasn't until his character showed up in the movie that I really got into it a little bit more. And one of the things that bothered me throughout the movie also is that they love their use of slow motion in this movie. There's nothing wrong with using some slow motion, especially in needed scenes, but this movie overuses slow motion to where they use it when characters are literally walking down the hall or just moving, not even during an action or fight scene. Slow motion and red lights are basically the selling points of this movie. For Bloodshot, I'm going to give action 3 stars. There's plenty of action in this movie. It's just boggled down by some really horrible shaky cam, and the visual effects in that final fight are super video game-ish, where you know you're not even watching characters fight but 3D models. Comedy in the movie, I'm going to give it 2 stars too, and like I said, that's all for Lamar Morris's character. character. Very funny, but I can understand how some people would find him annoying. I was just happy he showed up to bring my enjoyment of this movie a little higher. Drama in the movie, I'm gonna give it 2 stars. It's a super predictable story, and like I said, the trailers completely gave it away to where you're not even enjoying the first half because you know who the good and the bad people are. Horror in the movie, I'll give it 1 star too, and that's just mainly for the fact of the blood, the guts. If you're particularly woozy to that, you might not enjoy it, but it's really nothing. Suspense in the movie, I'm gonna give it 2 stars too. Like I said, very predictable story. You know how things will most likely end up by the end, so your suspense on characters who will survive and won't survive, pretty obvious. Casual fans, I'm gonna give it a C+. Cinephiles, I'm gonna give it a C-. And critically, I'm going to give it an F. For Bloodshot, it's a good time if you decide to rent it.
That'll do, Donkey. That'll do.
To me, I just feel bad for the fans of this comic book who really wanted the big screen adaptation and will try their hardest to like this movie. But in the end, I think this will just be a very forgettable adaptation. Let me know what you guys thought about Bloodshot if you got around to seeing it. Will you be checking it out this weekend? Anything and everything, be sure to like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at 3C Film Review. As always, I'm Chris. Take care.